Tonight, we have a special guest in studio in the person of Mr. Timothy Mangal, and he is the chairman of the National Housing Corporation. And tonight's topic is the new housing projects coming soon to a neighborhood near you. And today is Tuesday, the 10th of July, 2018. Welcome to all our listeners in St. Lucia, throughout the Caribbean, in the USA, Canada, and the UK. Whatever the time is, wherever you are, welcome to Keeping It Real, where we keep it real. Folks, we're in the carnival season, and this week we're going to see a lot of the action going down, and Monday and Tuesday is the Parade of the Bands, and we'd like to encourage you, all of us here at Keeping It Real, that safety comes first. Don't drink and drive. Don't drive and drink, because the life you save may very well be your own. Folks, you do know that over the past few weeks, the discussion in St. Lucia has been at a feverish pitch. In fact, for an issue or issues that we have become saturated with for quite a while, and that is healthcare. But I'm sure you've heard from one side or the other exactly how they think about healthcare and how it has progressed over the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years since 2009, when we had that fateful fire at St. Jude's. The government has made its statement. We have a number of players who have been making their voices heard. But folks, before we get into the meat of things tonight, which is about housing, I'd just like to rehash some of the issues that we've had as far as healthcare is concerned. Last week, Wednesday to be precise, we saw the government make their statement in the persons of the Honorable Prime Minister, the Minister of Health, and also the Minister of Economic Development. And they made the government's case on the way forward. Of course, there aren't the exact fine-tuned details at this point, because things are still being finalized as far as the national insurance is concerned, as far as the final undertakings for the St. Jude Hospital, and also for the OKEU Hospital. But we have been inundated with many rumors, lots of half-truths, and of course the usual propaganda which we have heard time and time again that have fallen flat on their sensationalism as far as what the government is doing with healthcare. Folks, there's a vicious rumor that's going around that persons from the Victoria Hospital who are currently employed there will lose their jobs when they apply to the OKEU Hospital. In fact, a number of people have been peddled with ridiculous stories. And the government has come out time and time again, definitively saying that is not the case. In fact, I was just reading a story yesterday in one of the publications where it was said again that the Prime Minister has said that not everyone will be hired at the OKEU Hospital. Folks, that is absolutely, blatantly, and unashamedly untrue. The Prime Minister never made that statement. However, what he did say was that persons employed with Victoria Hospital would now have to apply to the new entity, the OKEU Hospital, and based on that interview, it will be decided whether they will be taken on board. He never said that not all would be employed. Folks, we have to pay attention to the authoritative source of information. If you will be interviewed, your qualifications, and all your experience will be taken into consideration. There is nowhere in there a suggestion that all persons will not be employed. It's a possibility, but the Prime Minister did not say so. Now, the Prime Minister also went on to say that if you were not interested in moving on to the OKEU and wanted to remain with Victoria Hospital, or if in remaining with Victoria Hospital there was no longer a position for you, the government would acquire you in another department. They would train you to make you a viable employee within the government of St. Lucia. I must encourage every one of you listening out there to stop paying attention to the persons who have a vested interest in giving you wrong information. They have proven themselves to be malicious, they have proven themselves to be inaccurate, and they have proven themselves time and time again to not have the correct information. The correct source of information is the government of St. Lucia. Whether it's on the government website, whether it's on the individual ministry or minister Facebook pages or other social media pages, that is the source to which you should pay attention. Nobody outside has more information, has more accurate information than the government of St. Lucia. Now, so much for that. Folks, you know, over here on this show, Keeping It Real, we always stress that you keep it real. I'm going to keep it real with you tonight, again, as usual. Remember the multitude of problems we've had with Victoria Hospital? How members of the public have complained about doctors, how they've complained about attitudes of nurses or persons employed there. Let's get real. In any organization as large as a hospital, Victoria Hospital, where you have hundreds of employees, everybody is not going to be perfect. But nevertheless, in this whole argument about the OKEU hospital, all of a sudden now, some people who have been very vocal before are complaining about some people may very well not keep their jobs at the OKEU. That moving from Victoria Hospital and having them apply at this new entity is just a ploy to get rid of some people. But it's these same people some time ago. You know, I was having a conversation today and yesterday with a few friends of mine, and we were discussing the apprehensions of some people. And then, you know, somebody in the group inadvertently stumbled upon this little point that I'm about to bring up to you. We've heard issues of malpractice, whether rightfully or wrongfully is not the point. It's about people complaining about doctors, people complaining about nurses, people complaining about hospital staff, people complaining about attitudes. And even if all of that is incorrect, I have my own experience because my father was a patient at Victoria Hospital. And I have my own story about that situation. So I'm not asking anybody for any information about what has happened at Victoria Hospital. And if I have had that experience, listening to the stories, very similar stories from other persons in St. Lucia about their experiences at Victoria Hospital, I am tempted to conclude that those stories, by and large, are true. We've heard of people complain about doctors and situations of malpractice. We have a St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association. What are they doing about, or what have they done about malpractice allegations in St. Lucia? That's right, I'm going to shake up the boat tonight, so if you can't stay on, jump overboard. And if you don't like it, turn off your radio. Because we get into the meat of the issues here. Keep it real tonight. So many people have complained over the years that doctors should be fired, that certain people employed at Victoria Hospital should no longer be employed there because of their lousy, stinking attitudes. That doesn't mean everybody is the same, but let's talk about the people that we all have complained about over the years. Let's not pretend that we have this hunky-dory, angel white Victoria Hospital. Healthcare in St. Lucia, our health system in St. Lucia, has sucked for a very long time. Let's stop fooling around and be honest about it. We've had doctors and persons employing the healthcare system in St. Lucia who have sucked and who suck still. And they can suck salt on that tonight. And yet still, some of these very visible persons who have complained about the lousy service we have received at Victoria Hospital, all of a sudden, for expedience or for whatever purposes, political or whatever, are so concerned all of a sudden. Oh my gosh, boo-hoo-hoo, some people will lose their job. You bloody hypocrites. You're a bunch of hypocrites. Situation was so bad at Victoria Hospital. It was so bad that one of our top Calypsonians, the Invader, those of you who can remember it, let's shake it up tonight, had one of his most popular calypsos, Victoria. Do you remember that calypso? He was not extolling the virtues and all the niceties at Victoria Hospital. He certainly was not. He was putting it down for all time, because you will die, I will fade away, all of us will be gone, and that song will live on forever. Victoria Hospital has been made immortal in song by the Invader. And some people now want to pretend that everybody at Victoria Hospital is hunky-dory or persons in our health system. I don't need anybody to tell me otherwise. There are a number of people there who suck. And they need to go. We know that. And let's be honest. Which doctor or which medical persons are responsible for the woman who died when she was rejected from the Soufriere Hospital? Having a baby, died outside the hospital. Don't we have a conscience, you hypocrites? You shameless political animals? Don't you have any shame? And which doctor who is very vocal now, who is responsible for a newly married couple's loss of their baby? Let's keep it real tonight. Don't get me started with all the nonsense we've been hearing for so long. Let's be real. Because if we're going to clean up the medical system in St. Lucia, We don't only have to clean up the facilities, we have to clean up the lousy people who have taken the oath and who have accepted a salary to render service to the people of St. Lucia. Don't get me started tonight with the nonsense. How many people have their horror stories? So the problem in St. Lucia with healthcare is not simply a facility, because medical services are being rendered at the George Odlum Stadium. Same capabilities. If we want to complain about a physical structure, we can complain about a physical structure. But that does not limit the expertise that individuals have. It does not change their ability to render service, because doctors render service on the battlefield, doctors render service in the streets, and just recently in Castries, we had 2 doctors or medical students rendering service to persons who had been shot at the corner of Pena and Jeremy Street. So let's not be hypocrites tonight. Folks, I, as an individual, am excited about our national insurance plans, national health insurance plans. Because too often we hear about persons being diagnosed with whatever illness, whether it's cancer, but sadly we hear about stage 4 cancer. We hear about diabetes. We hear about all sorts of medical issues. And when they're diagnosed, it is too late. Final stages. And the only reason for that is not because they had the best medical care. It's because they could not afford medical care. And as a result, they postponed and put off going to the doctor because they could not afford. And even if they went to the doctor, they could not afford the medication. Now let's keep it real tonight again, because y'all got me on a roll. And I'm not putting any butter in that roll. It's a stale roll. And I don't like stale rolls. And all St. Lucians, I don't think there's one who likes anything stale as far as bread or anything is concerned. Folks, let's keep it real. We have a medical fraternity in St. Lucia. The SLMDA, the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association. We know that doctors have taken an oath. But as responsible persons in our society, they also have to adhere to other regulations, the regulations of state. And when we hear the noises that are being made all of a sudden by a certain number of doctors, we are left to wonder why all of a sudden. And again, I have to beat that horse. You know, nowadays we're talking about horses in all kind of forms. So let's talk about the medical horse. And I guarantee you something, it's not gonna be racing on February the 10th at the DSH racetrack. Because that horse is not a thoroughbred. It's a wild horse, incapable of participating with the big boys or with the quality. Because in St. Lucia, just like so many other things in our society, we have allowed some persons in whatever field they're in to do whatever they want, to get away. And there was the referral or the reference to doctors being in a noble profession, and that the noble profession of medicine was under attack. Let me make it quite clear, because saying such absolute nonsense is an insult to the intelligence of St. Lucians. I don't think anyone in St. Lucia has attacked the medical profession. Saying so by anyone is just a strategy to hold off on the facts and stop people from talking about the reality of the situation. If there is any criticism of anything, it is a criticism and it is a condemnation of individual doctors in a noble profession. Let's listen to this for a second.
Listen, did you know that Dr. Schaefer was in room 806 because he's dead?
Rose, what the hell are you talking about? Do you know what the hell she's talking about? No.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
What Dr. Schaefer? Our Dr. Schaefer?
Oh, Dr. Schaefer, the one who's always grabbing everybody's...
Was he sick?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, what in hell am I going to tell this boy Schaefer's parents? That a substitute nurse assassinated him because she couldn't tell the doctors from the patients on the floor? My God!
Well, folks, you know, there's always something you can find out there in film that gives you a connection and expresses it so very well. How many people have been given the wrong medicine in St. Lucia? Where's the accountability? I want to ask you, St. Lucia, and all those who are listening, because I know you all are listening tonight. You all are listening, and you're recording too. Where was the SLMDA all along in 2011, 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16? They were working behind the scenes. They were working behind the scenes, doing what exactly? Because I find it very expedient for them to say they were working behind the scenes. But up to this point, we have not heard one single thing they did behind the scenes. And the fact remains that healthcare in St. Lucia is the same lousy healthcare that it was 5 years ago. So what about working behind the scenes now? What has changed? Was St. Jude Hospital not finished back then? Is it finished now? It's the same. Were the patients housed and being administered medical care at the George Odlum Stadium back then in 2014? Yes, they were. Are they at the George Odlum Stadium now, being administered by the very same doctors and nurses? Yes, they are. Were the pumps for the sewer system at the George Odlum Stadium, were they out of service 5 years ago? Yes. Was sewage leaking and draining into the mangroves, the Mancote swamp, right across the road from the hospital? Yes. Was it also leaking and smelling up the hospital 5 years ago? Yes. Is the very same thing happening now? Yes. So folks, in a nutshell, I could go on and on and on tonight. We've already discussed the healthcare situation in St. Lucia. All the evidence is there for you all to pay attention to. Nevertheless, we're going to move on. Like I said earlier, it's the carnival season, and the police have indicated that they will be out in force. If you can't drink, stay home. We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back. We have a guest in studio, as I said earlier, and we'll be getting to him. His name is Mr. Timothy Mangal, and he's the chairman of the National Housing Corporation, with lots of facts on keeping it real. Thank you everyone, and welcome again to Keeping It Real. Tonight we have a guest in the studio. I don't think he's too much of a stranger to most of you listening. His name is Timothy Mangal, and he is the chairman of the National Housing Corporation. And just recently, I heard a number of interesting tidbits coming from the National Housing Corporation. And one of them is that we are on the verge of the beginning of a number of housing projects in St. Lucia. In fact, according to my discussions with Mr. Mangal, 11 housing projects around St. Lucia. I think it's an exciting thing for young people and persons who are looking for the opportunity to own a home, own some property in St. Lucia. And that definitely is always a good option for anyone thinking of doing the responsible thing. So I'd like to say, welcome to Keeping It Real, our first guest on Keeping It Real. Welcome, Mr. Mangal.
Thank you very much, Norbert. Thank you very much for having me here. Let me say good night, St. Lucia. And it is a pleasure to be here tonight. Of course, my intention is to give you as much information as possible on the various sites that we have actually unveiled, and to be able to afford St. Lucians the opportunity, which is quite rightfully one of the necessities. And I like that passion that you have about health. That same way, I carry that same passion about housing. I believe that housing is a fundamental necessity for all St. Lucians: shelter, clothing, food, and basically the health in touch. So tonight in question, I will give as much information about those projects and exactly what is happening at the National Housing Corporation.
Okay, great. Before we go ahead, I'd just like to inform our listeners again that if you'd like to call in with your questions and comments, telephone number is 451-1079. You can also email us at info@keepingitreal.lc. In 30 minutes, the lines will be opened up in 30 minutes. info@keepingitreal.lc. Or if you want to listen, or persons are asking you for the information, on Flow TV channel 119, you can listen to the program on there as well. So, in moving ahead, in discussing all of this, I'd like us to start at the beginning so we can get everyone to understand exactly what the National Housing Corporation is all about, how it came into being, and where we are right now. Because since this new administration got into office in June of 2016, they discovered some issues with the National Housing Corporation which had to be dealt with. But I'll pass that over to Mr. Mangal so he could give you the whole genesis of the National Housing Corporation and why it was formed and what its mission is for St. Lucia.
Okay. Well, no, but basically the National Housing Corporation, NHC, was formed as a merger between what was then the St. Lucia Housing Authority and the HUDC, the Housing and Urban Development Corporation. Now, from the Housing and Urban Development Corporation, we had previously the UDC, which was strictly the Urban Development Corporation, more or less with its focus, just like the name said, on the urban areas of St. Lucia, and carried out many developments within the suburban areas of the city of Castries. But there was the need to sort of nationalize it, to make housing available to all St. Lucians, and so the Housing and Urban Development Corporation was formed. But back in 2001, there was the merger between the Housing and Urban Development Corporation and the Housing Authority, which is the authority responsible for all the CDC units in Castries, La Clery, etc. And that happened in 2001. And the Act governing that organization was established, which is number 6 of 2001. So the National Housing Corporation was formed as a result of that, being responsible for providing affordable homes for St. Lucians nationally, and also tasked with the responsibility of being able to maintain and manage the CDC units, both in La Clery and also in the city of Castries.
Okay, good. Okay, so administration changes and a number of issues were found with the National Housing Corporation. What exactly were they, and how did they affect the operations and the service that the National Housing Corporation was supposed to give to the people of St. Lucia?
Basically, the NHC, before it was the NHC, when it was the Housing and Urban Development Corporation, did a number of successful projects because it was solely focused and concentrated on providing housing for St. Lucians. But since it got merged with the St. Lucia Housing Authority.
And what year was that?
That was in 2001.
2001.
Mm-hmm. So it carried all the liabilities of the St. Lucia Housing Authority. You would realize, remember, that the Conway Housing Project, the CDCs, was developed prior to this. And there was a loan of $40 million taken from the National Insurance Corporation in order to be able to do those units. The debt of that St. Lucia Housing Corporation came onto the books of the NHC. So that became the genesis of the problems of the NHC. So NHC moved from a balance sheet where it had some monies, it was a little positive, to immediately a balance sheet that was really in a deplorable state. And that affected its ability to be able to get financing, because you'd well understand that a statutory body is established to operate with its own, on its own. So the NHC became stifled in the process of getting proper loans, despite that there were government guarantees. In some cases, the only way it could have gotten a loan, which was, I think, for only the Marigo Housing Project, was with a government guarantee. But it went down.
But why would anyone burden an organization or a statutory body which had been functioning so well with a situation like this?
Well, that is left to be, obviously those back then in 2001 felt it was the best thing to do. But I would say that it was not. It was not. And you could see it in many countries across the world. A national housing corporation, or an entity which is responsible for providing housing, is not exactly the same entity that is responsible for the maintenance and the operation of those units. In a lot of metropolitan countries and so on, the city council or the town councils and so on, or the metropolitan councils are the one responsible for the maintenance and operations of units, while that housing authority is tasked with the responsibility to move on and to simply be able to construct and provide those homes that were available. So that in itself, in my opinion, would be a much better approach. And that is another subject that I don't want to delve too much into tonight, because we have a lot of information to give out. But clearly we've been making the pronouncements that at some point we will be looking to see whether we could divest the responsibility of the NHC for the maintenance of units for rental purposes, and for it to focus primarily and solely on its core function, which is to provide affordable homes for St. Lucians.
Okay, good. So now we can move forward a bit. There are a number of projects on stream for 11 different areas. Would you mind telling us what those areas are?
Well, yes. Those areas are the Shock development, and that is lands in Shock that was acquired. In fact, I will just go through them, and then I will go through some more details on one of them. We have the Shock Development Project, which is directly above the cinema in Shock area. We have the La Claire Development. We have the Rock Hall Development, the Talvan Phase 3, the Bel Air 1 Development, the Bel Air 2 Development, and Bel Air is in the southern part of Castries southeast. Talvan is in Barbono. Rock Hall, of course, is in Castries East. Angers Development, that's in Micoud, Angers Micoud. Bois Joli Development. Larissos Development in Vieux-Fort. River Dore Development, that is in Soisel. And we have the Canaries Development. Now, those sites, I will start with the Shock Development. Shock lands were acquired by the government of St. Lucia in 2003. Now we know who was in office, which administration was in office in 2003. Those lands were acquired and a part payment was made to the landowner. Nothing else was paid to the landowner, and that property accumulated interest. This government, having come into office, had to pay to the landowner the balance plus a significant sum of interest. I think in the region of over $3 million in interest.
So then the total with that 3 million was approximately how much?
I don't have the exact details of it, but it would have significantly increased the value, or rather the expense initially, the cost of those lands. So we had a situation where that was done. It was passed over to the National Housing Corporation. And after doing so, a plan was developed, and then it was deemed that the area is not suitable for affordable housing at that point. And shelved.
So in essence, that's the lands in shock which the government purchased, paid off how long ago?
The government in 2003, the government acquired that property.
Right.
And the government never paid off that property in its entirety.
Was there any reason why
recently.
They did not?
Well, it's left,
maybe we need to ask them.
that kind of question.
Yes.
But that was rather foolish, because it's a case where if you are acquiring that property and then you know that there is interest charges that will be paid, including the cost of the land, it would have been wise to, as much as possible, try and pay those properties and try and develop it. If the whole idea is to develop it. But having done that, they simply shelved it. So we find ourselves in a position today where if we were to simply discard that project, the government would be losing money. So developing it would be a case of salvaging that property as much as possible that you can. Now, in the original design, 89.78 acres of land was acquired. But we have a design where it indicates that only 53 acres of that property was suitable for housing. So we have the challenge now of trying to see how we can maximize that site with a new plan, a new development. So our strategy is clearly to try and ensure that more than that 53 acres can be established, can be put into housing development. And I'm confident that we could do it. So shock in itself, we have revisited shock because we have no choice in revisiting shock. And we have determined that shock is possible for housing development. But I must add clearly, and I must caution everyone, do not expect shock to be a low income or a middle income housing project. I expect shock to be middle to high income to a higher income type of project.
And that would be primarily because of the location, or is it because of the acquired cost that we now have to move to a more upscale development?
Right. The acquired costs, the interest included in that cost, and also the fact that there would be lands rendered unusable. The amount of lands acquired that would have been paid for and would be rendered unusable. So we now have to try and recoup that cost on the remaining lands which are saleable.
What is the reason for about 30 acres not being usable?
The topography. It was deemed that the topography is not suitable for development.
And that's it's mountainous?
It is steep, etc. So what we are doing as a new board, what we are doing with our technical staff is we have revisited that site. We have taken our topographical surveys, and we're doing something that is exciting, where we will have single-family residential units, lots of about 5,000 square feet and up, where you could have a home situated on them. But those steeper sites, not that they cannot take buildings, but it would have been too costly to develop them into single-family residential units. So we are coming on those lots, and we're now designing a new concept, which is called the multi-family residential development. So just like you have in the case of the CDCs, but it's not going to be like this. It's going to be a lot much better and more fancy, and just like you have in the metropolitan countries, that you could buy a flat.
A condo or a townhouse.
That's correct. A condo or a townhouse. We could now go into those steeper lots, excavate them, put in the necessary retaining structures, make them suitable for multi-story development. And that way we will be able to spread that cost over the various units. We will have one foundation and one roof for a 3-story building, and therefore we'll be able to sell those units. Now, in order to make that happen, there will be some amendments to legislation, but already within the Land Registry Act, there was an amendment made to the land registry where you could actually, where a block and parcel number is not deemed only an area of land, but it is also deemed a living area. So you could have a vertical unit being given its own block and parcel number. So it is possible that we could sell a unit. And we know for a fact that the St. Lucians of an older age might like to have their gardening and all this kind of stuff. But we now have a new generation. We now have a new set of persons, young persons, who are more or less young professionals, more focused to their work, and do not mind living in those kind of units. Obviously, when they go overseas, when St. Lucians go overseas, they live in those conditions. So we believe right here in St. Lucia, we could create those units. It would be a lot more affordable than having a single family residential unit, and persons could live in those units. And more so, it will be maintained by a central authority, where you would pay a yearly subscription fee, your insurance would be paid, your maintenance would be done, your garbage would be collected, etc., and so on, all in one central unit. So you have none of these services and facilities that you have to worry about. So that would be it for shock. By doing so, we believe that we would be able to eat up on those. There are about 30 acres that were rendered impossible for development, and make shock affordable, make shock available, and excited towards St. Lucia. And I can tell you that the response for shock is tremendous from St. Lucians.
It's close to Castries.
Yes, it's tremendous. People are geared up. They are ready to deposit their monies, etc. And as we go on further in the program, I will tell you how that will be made possible for you to do so.
Okay, good.
Now, since we know that shock will be a high middle income to a higher income bracket development, we now must have other projects around shock. So there came the Talvan Phase 3. Now, why do we call it Phase 3? Because there are squatter areas within what is Talvan 1 and Talvan 2. Along those lands, it is very difficult to find virgin territory in St. Lucia without having squatters.
For those who don't know where Talvan is, exactly where is it?
Okay, Talvan is in the Babono area. If you could access Talvan via this road called Tishime going into Foaso, and then you simply turn right. It is the area next to the Foaso Health Center. Or you could also access it from Kako through that other road, the Seventh Adventist Church, where you go down the hill.
Well, I see some knowing nods from Mr. Ellis there and Champagne.
Yes.
It's the regular areas of hanging out.
Yes, and these guys are truly nationals. They are truly St. Lucians, so they know every little corner, nooks and cranny of St. Lucia.
But Champagne, don't think because we have a guest we've forgotten you. Eh? We have not forgotten you.
Right. So what has happened with Talvan? Right? You had those lands acquired again by the government of St. Lucia, promising the people that we would make affordable housing, we'll be able to give you your houses. You would have heard, and I will mention that name. Sometimes I don't like to, but you would have heard Alvina Reynolds, being the parliamentary rep for Babono, making many promises. Former at the time, former parliamentary rep for Babono, making several promises to the people.
You mean like St. Jude's Hospital too?
Well, yes, making promises.
I seem to detect a pattern of behavior.
The then Minister for Housing, Stanley Felix, coming out and saying that Talvan would be developed. All these people did was entered into an agreement with a foreign company where 60% of that land would have to be pre-sold to St. Lucians before that foreign company could simply spend $1 on that site. Unfortunately for us, they did not have time transferring the property to the foreign entity. I mean, that was stopped because we had the general election in 2016.
Right. Well, before we go ahead any further, there was an event not too long ago where yourself and the Minister of Economic Development, Guy Joseph, met with a number of stakeholders.
Correct.
To discuss the projects that are coming on, these housing projects. And we'll hear a bit of what Minister Guy Joseph had to say.
But we have a serious problem when it comes to housing in this country. And this problem has existed for many years. I think over the last 20 years, I cannot recall any major successful housing project that have been implemented in this country. And even from the private sector perspective, when developments have taken place, there's always a burden to carry after in terms of the infrastructure maintenance, the quality of these developments as far as it relates to being able to hand these projects over to the Ministry of Infrastructure for onward maintenance. And in several developments in and around St. Lucia, you find very bad road conditions existing. You find land movement because the developments are not undertaken in a proper manner. And sometimes we blame the system. But it is not always the failure of the system. It is sometimes the eagerness of persons to facilitate development. And so a developer would come to the DCA and say, can you approve 5 lots for me? Because I need the money to facilitate the development, to put in the roads, and then they spend part of the money, and then the other part is not spent, and you have to release another 5 lots, and you go on. By the time you check it, the entire development is sold, and the infrastructure is not in place, because persons are eager to pay down on the land or on the housing project. We have been looking as a government outside of St. Lucia for investment in the housing sector. And in my discussions, I saw my PS just walked in, the PS of Housing, welcome, with the NHC and the Ministry of Housing. We found a situation where these 2 entities were almost working in competition with each other. And we felt that there was a need to bring the 2 entities together because they are both designed to meet the housing needs of the country. According to our records, we are short of some 14,000 houses in St. Lucia. That is what the statistics are showing. I may not necessarily be of the view that we need 14,000 houses, but I think anywhere 5,000 and up is needed. The question is, how do we achieve the task of developing housing in a manner that can meet the needs of the market? We have a second problem when it comes to that. Persons who have not acquired land and house before the age of 30 and 35, they are running into problems with the financial institutions to get a mortgage once you get to 40. And I recall a lady came to me and said to me, I did not realize I was getting old until I went to the bank and they told me, you don't qualify based on your age. Because the repayment period that is required, they would have passed that age of retirement, which is 65. So here we have real problems to deal with. The other related social problem that we have is that there is a direct correlation between people's living conditions and their general behavior and outlook in life. So we are trying to solve all the crime problems by having more policemen, more vehicles for the police, more law enforcement. But we are not addressing the core social problems that are affecting people's outlook of life in general. And we know that housing or shelter is a basic requirement for life. As much as food and clothing is, shelter falls within the same bracket. Now, for many of us, shelter could mean different things. If you're not getting wet by the rain, that may mean shelter. But for some people, even if they're inside their house, they still get wet by the rain. And we expect these people to have the same outlook of life that those of us who can afford better live under. And we have a very imbalanced society in terms of where we are. So the intention today was to bring the stakeholders together and to say, this is the plan that we have. we need to address the housing needs.
Thank you. Welcome back, folks. You heard it from the Minister of Economic Development, Guy Joseph, telling you about the housing situation in St. Lucia. According to the information there, we need about 14,000 houses built in St. Lucia if we are to deal with the persons who want to own some property. We have this government now on the verge of rolling out 11 housing projects, and a number of you will be interested in acquiring or owning your own piece of St. Lucia. And with us in studio tonight to discuss this is the chairman of the National Housing Corporation, Mr. Timothy Mangal. So, Mr. Mangal, before we went to that little clip there with the minister, you were discussing the shock lands, and we were moving on to the Talvan area.
Lands, yes. So basically what we have done since we came in was we dismembered the 2 squatter areas from the parent parcel in Talvan. So we moved this aside and we created an area which is called the Virgin Territory. So we understand very much that in partnering with private developers and private sector persons, that there must be an element of profit. So we want to ensure that we do not disadvantage them from the very start by putting them in the for the development of the squatter lands. So those squatter areas, what we did was we, in collaboration with the parliamentary representative for the area, we had town hall meetings and we discussed this with the people in Talvan. And I can tell you today that we have surveyed all of the lands in Talvan Phase 1, and we are making those properties available to the people at the meager cost of $6 a square foot. Now, some people might say $6 may appear to be expensive, but you have to understand this in the context of how much it is going to cost the NHC to develop those lands. And the price of developing lands presently in St. Lucia is in the region of $10 a square foot. When you consider this. So in essence, the NHC and the government of St. Lucia will be subsidizing those lands by approximately $4 a square foot to those persons. We have finished that first section, and those lands already have block and parcel numbers. So the people who occupied those properties for years, who simply had a home for them to use as shelter, could now come into the NHC, regularize their status, purchase those properties, and use this as collateral for their own investment, for their business, or to send their students to school. That is being done. And also, we've rescinded the agreement with this foreign company, and we are proceeding to partner with developers for the Virgin Territory lands. Then we have Bel Air 1 and Bel Air 2.
And Bel Air is in?
Castries Southeast.
Okay.
That is on the periphery of Castries Southeast and the Ancillary Canneries constituency area there. So those 2 lands, those 2 sites, the one is actually the former GIS property, and it's a total of 70.35 acres of land. That area will be developed into a low to medium income housing. So whereas we have Shock, that's going to be a medium to higher income, we're going to have Talvan, which is going to be a middle income. We're going to have Bel Air, which is going to be low to middle income housing. And most of that site is actually Virgin Territory, so it renders itself very suitable for development.
So let's look at these 3 areas that you've mentioned so far. You said Shock,
Correct.
Talvan, and Bel Air. In those 3 areas, what are the number of units that are anticipated to be built? For example, Shock, then we'll go to Talvan, and then Bel Air.
Very well. Okay. In the previous design for Shock, there were 205 lots in the subdivision, but we are looking to increase this. Tonight, I will not give you specifics as to exactly the precise number of lots, because I will explain to you the pattern or what will be happening with the public-private sector partnership. Truly, there will be a sense of development or design that will be done between the NHC and the various developers that will be engaged to those sites. But there are preliminary proposals that are showing that for the total areas in question, we have those 11 sites. We're going to have pretty much over 2,000 to 2,300 lots within those developments created in all. So you have Bel Air 1, then you have Bel Air 2, which is a site of 29.65 acres. That site has some houses already built on, so there is an element of a squatter settlement, which again will be removed and will be regularized separately by the NHC, but the remaining lands will be available for development. Boisjoli development, and that is in the constituency of Dennery South. Now, you know Dennery South has a very small population, so clearly that is targeted towards increasing the population within that Dennery area and to create affordable housing along the East Coast. That site, 85.51 acres, is in the Boisjoli area. It is all virgin territory. Now, where it is directly northeast of the site of the Dennery Polyclinic area there, and I think the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yeah, that's up on that hill there.
Up on that hill area there. I think some development was proposed or was attempted there before, because there is an actual road network within that area. So we will be working along with that existing infrastructure and road network, and we'll be looking to develop the site into a middle to a low income housing project in that community.
So this I'm sure is exciting news for St. Lucians who are looking into moving in those areas, in the Castries area, in the Babono area. There's always been a lot of talk about Babono being that area of St. Lucia, the northeast side being, if you want, another new frontier, because there's always been talk of a highway coming through there, eventually connecting with the East Coast. And if that does happen, pretty soon, that area is going to explode as far as development is concerned. There has been a lot of discussion with the government about the intentions for putting a highway in that area from just north of Dennery and to bypass. Yeah. So the plans are ongoing with that, and I'm sure we will be getting some information about that in a reasonable period of time.
Correct.
Now,
all right,
with these developments, what is the process for anyone, if you could get to that eventually?
Eventually, good. So running quickly for the remainder, we have the Angers development, 45.27 acres, and that is in the area of the Angers Secondary School. Again, we have some pockets of squatter developments, but the majority of the lands would be virgin and territory, and that area is generally flat, so that renders it very suitable for a housing project. We have the Larissos development in Vieux Fort. We have listed Larissos presently. We have a few challenges with Larissos, with a certain claim, but we are hoping to get over that hurdle. The hurdles we have with Larissos very shortly. So by the time we run through the preliminary stages of that development, hopefully we could get matters sorted out and we could launch out the Larissos housing project as well. Then we have the Rivadore development, and we've heard previously of all the challenges with Rivadore, where all of those monies were expended to a contractor, the works were done, the works were never protected, government having to come in and pay over $7 million, and now we are back to square one. Those works were not protected, and Rivadore basically, we virtually lost another $7 million, because within that period, 2011 to 2016, another foreign company was engaged. A local contractor was already there doing very well, doing his work. That local contractor was asked to partner with a foreign company, Beaupanel. Beaupanel did not invest any monies in there. The land was transferred to them, and so it went on. The government had to eventually come in and pay over $7 million in order for us to salvage that property, and now that is another loss for St. Lucians. So now we are actually going to look to redevelop in Rivadore.
That's incredible. Another loss again with the housing development.
Correct.
It's unbelievable.
Then the Connery's development. The Connery's development, 57.75 acres. And if you know Connery's, it's that site immediately south of the Connery's cemetery, heading bonding with what is supposed to be the Boca project, and bonded with the Queen's Chain, has a magnificent view up there, beautiful sunset, etc. So we are looking to develop that site. Now I left two in Castries. I think One in Castries two in Castries for less. There is the La Claire development, 3.11 acres.
I wanted to get to La Claire,
La
and you
Claire
brought it up.
development.
There have been a lot of issues, and it's been in the news for a bit now. Maybe we can pay a little attention to that, because many people seem to not have the facts, again, about exactly what is going on at La Claire and the old CDC there. So maybe you could give us the whole evolution of the problem,
Right.
what led up to wanting to move the people out of there, and what has really caused La Claire to get into the news as far as the residents in that area are concerned.
Okay. That La Claire housing CDC units has been
How old
rendered
is it?
unsuitable
How old is
for
it?
a long time. These were done immediately after the 1948 fire, together with those on Jeremy Street. So we're talking about units that are about 70 years old, and they were made as temporary housing. The roof in those units are laden with asbestos, so it is really unsuitable.
There's these old corrugated asbestos roofs, right?
Correct. And there are old bungalows and so on that has deteriorated over the years. It is structurally unsound. It is unfit for human habitation. And by the very NHC Act, it says that if the properties are unfit for human habitation, it should be demolished. And quite rightfully so, way back. So it is not a government, or rather a UWP thing trying to take out people from there. This has transcended both political parties and both governments. And I can read to you from a letter, or rather, and that is from the Office of the Prime Minister.
Dated?
Okay, this is dated July 23rd, 2002. And that is
16
from
years
the
ago.
Honorable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, the Honorable Kenny D. Anthony. Okay, indicating relocation of CDC residents at La Claire and demolition of buildings. This is to direct that a social survey be undertaken to determine who are the bona fide residents of the CDC buildings in La Claire and thus eligible for relocation. Okay, and a possible site for relocation of these residences and the cost of such an exercise. Okay, basically, the government wishes to demolish the existing buildings and return the site for possible construction. Then they were talking about a police station. So that has been there, earmarked for demolition since 2002. In that same year, there was another letter dated 2nd of August 2002 from the Ministry of Planning. And that came from the Honorable Ignatius Jean. That one dated, October 25th, 2002. Basically echoing what then the Minister for Finance says. Okay, it says...
The former Prime Minister.
Right, the former Prime Minister and Minister for Finance then. And that is from the Minister of Planning then, Ignatius Jean, who was also the parliamentary rep for La Claire, that area. And it says, please proceed immediately with the issuance of notices to the occupants to vacate the premises by 90 days. Period. Recommended. Notices should also be served on all illegal occupants of surrounding lands adjacent to the bachelors' quarters and along the La Claire River. Right. So that was then. And the National Housing Corporation, based on those instructions, went ahead in October 31st, 2002 and wrote to all the occupants, indicating that that property, that area is earmarked for redevelopment. More so, there was a cabinet conclusion by the then administration of the St. Lucia Labour Party.
So can you believe this, Champagne? And the current government, who's been making noise and saying that the current government is unconscionable and doesn't care about the people in La Claire, and they want to move people and make people homeless?
Yeah, we have documents dating from back in 2002.
Right. So you see the mischievousness.
I'm happy for the information by Mr. Mangal.
Correct.
No, we keep it real over here,
Right.
That is right. So here is it. Cabinet conclusion number 228 of 2003. Declaration of a special enforcement area. Cabinet considered a memorandum dated 19 March 2003, submitted by the Minister of Physical Planning, Environment and Housing, and agree to declare block and parcel number 0849D128 and 227 including the Ravine Reserve at La Clery, as a special enforcement area. Now, I will explain what is a special enforcement area. A special enforcement area means that an area that is demarcated after demolition, that if anybody should carry out any rebuilding and so on, it empowers the NHC or the owner of the property to simply move in and demolish whatever comes in there. So really and truly, those buildings laden with asbestos that the government had paid those $10,000, the bona fide tenants moved out of those units.
Now let me ask you a question there. Are you saying then that all of the original tenants to those buildings have moved out?
All of the original tenants that were paid $10,000 have moved out.
When was that $10,000 paid?
That was paid in 2014.
2000, that's 4 years ago.
Yes. That was paid in 2014, and the persons having been paid those monies vacated the premises because they were paid a displacement grant to assist them in displacing to another site.
So then, in essence, the very government or the administration that had passed those instructions that the tenants were to move out of there, they gave these instructions to, via a cabinet conclusion or confirmation of those instructions, they passed that information to the National Housing Corporation to take action. The government paid the tenants the $10,000 to move.
Correct.
At least 4 years ago.
That's correct.
And it's 2018 now, and this current administration is being blamed for the situation where the previous administration failed to take the actions. Correct. Sounds like failure to complete St. Jude's as well. And failure to open the OKEU hospital.
Right.
But this administration is the one which is being blamed for the failures of the past administration.
Right.
Let's go ahead.
So what was done in La Clery? When those people left, as the roofs were removed in those units, the electricity and the water disconnected. But if you leave units exposed and open there, other persons are going to move in and squat. So you had other persons moving in, seeing that those units are still standing, and reoccupied those units. And these are the people now who are making all the noise, saying that they are bona fide tenants. They are the descendants of persons.
Now, recently, we had a very unfortunate situation in those same units there, where a young man was electrocuted. Can you give us the status of those premises where he was conducting those electrical works on his own, and exactly what was going on surrounding that unit?
Well, I don't think that he was electrocuted within an NHC unit, or that he acquired the power from a unit, because those units has absolutely no power in them. He would have had to take that power from another source, which I understood that he did. And he was trying to help himself in constructing some kind of makeshift facility, but probably on NHC's property, which really is rather unfortunate. It is sad that someone should have lost their lives trying to do this. Again, if simply that they were following the instructions then, because, and that is what I keep saying, that the danger that is there is not only a danger to third parties or persons around the area. It is not only a danger to the NHC, but it is a danger to the very occupants of those units, because they are involved in activities there that is posing their very lives at danger. So by the NHC looking to demolish those units is actually looking to protect them against the very activity that is endangering their own lives. Now, what is very important is those persons who went back and placed new roofs on those buildings, makeshift roofs, by virtue of that area being declared a special enforcement area, the NHC had a right to simply move in and to demolish it. But being sensitive to the plight of persons, the NHC still went through a process of serving notices indicating that we intend to demolish the units. Notices were served in February of this year. Notices was again served in May of this year. And when we moved in with a contractor in June and got certain resistance, we kept on pushing back the date until July. And July, the contractor moved in towards the end of June into early July, demolished a number of units, and a few persons, I think 3 units, they got resistance from those persons. And so we had to go to the court with this matter. When we went to court on social media, you
Right.
heard all those comments that the NHC is unconscionable, trying to get $34,000 from persons who doesn't have the money, recouping an investment that to say that it will cost them to remobilize. But really and truly, what we were simply looking to achieve is to ensure that these persons vacate those properties, that we could demolish them. And in the court matter which was heard in June, the court granted the NHC's request. In fact, the court was about to rule and give those persons 2 weeks notice. Well, we agreed mutually that those persons should be given a little bit more time. They were supposed to leave July 2nd. We agreed to give them until July 31st for them to leave the area.
So,
we did not claim cost. Neither did we ask for $30,000.
So again, the NHC is exercising a great deal of flexibility in trying to assist with the residents, even though they are illegally occupying the premises.
That's right. Now there is 2 phases to that development. There is a second phase of that development which the NHC will now move in, serve the necessary notices, and seek to do the same thing as it has done with the first phase.
Okay, folks, we're going to take a break. You're listening to Keeping It Real on Kyrie FM. Your questions after the break, 451-1079, or you can email us your comments and questions at info@keepingitreal.lc. Okay, welcome back to Keeping It Real. Tonight we're discussing housing, and in studio to discuss the number of housing projects on the verge of being implemented in St. Lucia, we have with us the chairman of the National Housing Corporation, Mr. Timothy Mangal. And we have a call. Call in. 451-1079. Champagne. Do you want one of those units?
No. That is going to be private between myself.
You gotta speak with someone, right? the money person in all of this. You have to have a discussion. But before we get into this housing thing here, we have to keep it real. And last week, Mr. Champagne over there was not in because he had just come in from a little trip.
Housing unit in Martinique.
Okay. But as we move on, let me say a little bit about the concept and what the NHC is seeking to do. Over the years, we have seen that there have been very little investment in housing, and whether it be in the private sector or in the public sector. The last major housing project that the government did via the NHC was the Marigo housing development. And that was in 2008 to 2011. Nothing happened significantly in the last 5 years. And so that was the case until we implemented the Forest Day housing project. And I could give you a little bit into the detail of the Forest Day housing project, which became a model for us to follow. But before going into that detail, I want to thank all the persons who attended that symposium last Thursday. We saw the need for us as a result of limited financial resources, because we know of all the challenging issues in healthcare and everything else in St. Lucia. So and our budget. So it is almost impossible for the government at this moment to invest into housing. And in the last budget, we only got $1.5 million, which for a housing construction program, which could do actually very little for us. So we decided that we will partner with the private sector into a private-public sector partnership arrangement. Now, we've seen a number, the previous administration tried it with a number of foreign companies, and it never really got off the ground. We decided that we will do so first and foremost with our local people, because we do have capacity in this country. We have contractors who are able, we have the financial institutions, we have the suppliers of building materials. So we actually decided that we would challenge them. And we indicated that we are going to invest or partner with them. So we had this symposium last week, Thursday, and we invited contractors, suppliers of building materials, and also the financial institutions. We actually catered for, there are about 70 persons, but our register indicated that 124 persons attended that meeting. Every single major contractor in St. Lucia was represented. Every single financial institution was represented, not by the line staff, but by the managers of those institutions. And every single supplier of building materials was represented in this meeting. And the number of questions, the amount of engagement of these people, and they are all very excited about this new plan, because this new plan is real. We're keeping it real. The NHC is going to make it real, and this is the way we are investing in housing in this country. What is the process? How we go about doing it is very simple. With this partnership, we will partner with the private sector. Initially, those companies, and as early as yesterday, we made forms available at the National Housing Corporation. There is what is called an expression of interest, EOI. So persons who attended, the plans were unveiled. There were preliminary designs for all of those sites, and a PowerPoint presentation was displayed. Questions were answered. If a particular contractor is interested in the development of any one of those sites, he simply fills that expression of interest form. That expression of interest is a pre-qualification form where you would put in all of your details, what are the projects you've done over the years, etc., and so forth. And that form will be evaluated by a technical committee of the NHC. Evaluated by a technical committee, and a recommendation is made. After that recommendation is made, then decisions will be taken as to who are the contractors that will be asked to submit a proposal. So say, for example, let us use Talvan, for example. If 10 contractors decide to show an expression of interest in Talvan, that evaluation committee will look at the various proposals and may determine and say, well, we believe 6 out of the 10 is suitable. So now we will write to the 6 and say, submit us a proposal. Now, in your proposal, we actually, just as the NHC, providing the necessary technical advice and guidance and specifications. But it is left up to you, that developer. We are now charging you with the responsibility to tell us how you will design this project within the parameters that we have set, within the medium or low income, within the high density or medium density, etc. projects. You'll tell us how you're designing this project, how you plan to finance the project, how do you plan to implement the project, within what time period you'll implement the project, and how you plan to market the project itself. So really and truly, if we do engage you as the NHC, we will partner with you doing all of that. We'll provide you with the technical assistance, and we will monitor exactly what you're doing. You will be given the right to advertise this project locally, advertise it through all of the necessary mediums. Your own staff as this developer will be given the right to show persons those various sites. And in conjunction with the NHC, the necessary sales are being made. And of course, the various equity will be taken into consideration. So, for example, the NHC will put in the land. Let's say the value of the land becomes 20% of the development, and the contractor has determined that this is the amount that he's going to spend. This is how he's going to develop that site. And that is accepted while the projects deposits are taken, while the projects are being sold. Then it will be, the proportions will be made equally. So the NHC recoups its 20% investment. The contractor be paid 80% in accordance to his investment, and at the end of the day, the various profits would go, after that is done, would go directly to the NHC.
Okay, we have 2 email questions, and I will start off with the first one, and it's my question to the chairman, Mr. Timothy Mangal. I have been hearing about the shock development, but haven't heard when this project will commence. I don't know if this has been mentioned, and I have not heard about it. So can you please give me a time frame as to when this shock development will commence, and how long will it take for completion? Also, what would be the cost rate per square foot?
Okay. A good question. All of those projects we have placed out, including Shock. There's going to be the various forms has gone out as early as yesterday. Within 1 month, there's going to be a 1 month period for the expression of interest to come back to the NHC. It will be evaluated. Then there will be a request for proposal. The whole idea is that we are targeting starting a few of those projects January of next year. So Shock is earmarked to commence very early next year. At the point when the designs, because we do have a design for Shock, but it's a preliminary design. When we engage this contractor and this agency for Shock, we will then go in partnership and finalize a more comprehensive plan. At that stage, we will be able to know how many lots, what are the sizes of the lots, where we will actually build houses, where we will have the multifamily units and so forth. At that point, when this is done, we will now call on all the persons, because I know there is a floodgate waiting to open to come into the NHC to apply and to make deposits. At that stage, we will now open it to applications from persons for
from
lots.
The public.
Yeah, from the public for lots in Shock. We will have a fixed sum. This is to be determined. I do not want to state exactly what it is now. Neither the question that is asked as to what will be the cost of Shock. That will be determined immediately after. We're looking at the range, but it has to be confirmed by the board of the NHC before that information could be placed. But once all of that is done, you will be given an opportunity to apply. There will be an evaluation process the same way for every applicant to determine if you are able to purchase that property or not. Once it is determined that you are able, you will be given an opportunity to place a deposit on that site.
Now, the question from that email here, should we expect that process for the application by individuals to be within the first quarter, the first half of next year?
It will commence within the first quarter.
So by the end of March, we should be able to take applications for the units at
before
Shock.
Before that.
Okay.
As early as January, and it depends for some of the projects. We have some smaller projects, so it depends on how quickly we are able to come up with the final design of that project. Immediately as the final design is done, we will be able to now put more information and take deposits for those projects.
Okay, telephone calls if you have questions or comments on the housing projects coming up in St. Lucia. Number is 451-1079, and you can also email us. The email address is info@keepingitreal.lc. We have another email question, and this time it's from Ottawa, Canada. And the question is, have architectural plans been drafted and prices established for these units? I think we answered that a while ago.
Right.
Can you provide an estimated price range?
For which one? Each development or Shock?
I guess that would be Shock. There was nothing specific here about the area, but I guess the same response applies to this.
All right. Now, price range. I don't want anybody to hold me and say that the chairman said it's going to cost X, but I'll give you a range, right? Remember I said that Shock is not expected to be a low or medium income development. The price of development of land, like you have heard mentioned previously, would be $10 and over a square foot. For the Shock development, because of the magnitude of the development, and the type of soil, we would have to put in a central sewage system for that project, and it's going to be a real modern development with proper infrastructure. So it is expected that Shock will range anywhere from about $18 to $25 a square foot. So it's not going to, but even at that price, I know that it's going to be affordable towards the targeted persons, and persons itself are quickly looking to purchase into those units.
Right. I think at that symposium last week with the minister, you did actually mention a price range for these units. I actually watched
that was for the buildings.
Right,
for the buildings. For the conventional method of construction, which is what St. Lucians are more accustomed to. right? We indicated at that symposium that we will be looking to offer 3 types of units: a starter home, a 2-bedroom house, and a 3-bedroom house. Now, a starter home would comprise a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, and just a small central living facility. Just the common basic that you require in order to live in a place. That would be about 400 square feet, and we are targeting in the region of $80,000 for that unit. That unit, though, will be done within one of the low-income developments, and it would be done on a lot of approximately 3,000 square feet. 3,000 square feet, and that house may cost you in the region of $110,000. If you look at a mortgage of $110,000 over 15, 20 years, a single person within $2,500 a month or less can afford that mortgage when you factor in the 40% that the bank would have factored in to give you a loan. So we have that unit. Then we're going to have the 2-bedroom unit, which is going to be approximately 800 square feet, and again would cost about $160,000 plus the land. So we're trying to target it or bring it in the region of $200,000. Right. And the 3-bedroom unit with land will be within the region of $300,000. We want to make sure that we cap those developments in the region of $300,000, because once you go above $300,000, that apex becomes a lot narrower, and the number of persons who can afford would actually diminish, and so on. But I must also add that all of these are priced on the basis of our conventional method of construction, which is brick and mortar.
Okay. Folks, we'd like to just pass on some information here. Our regular phone line, the main line, 451-1079, is somehow not receiving calls. So we have an alternate number. That number is 713-0931. If you have questions for the chairman of the National Housing Corporation with regards to these upcoming housing projects, the number to call, 713-0931. We're having some problems with the main line. The alternate number, 713-0931.
Right. It looked like this is synonymous with my appearance here. The last time I was here, the lines were not working as well. Nevertheless, like I said, these are the conventional methods of building. But we are looking at possible, exciting, different methods of building which various persons...
Hello, thank you for calling.
Yes. I want to know from the chairman where at Shock those lands are. That Shock land he is referring to. Could you give me some idea?
Okay, thank you very much, caller. The Shock lands are immediately above the Caribbean cinemas. These are the lands nearing the JQ Block factory, and it stretches that area above Union all the way into joining with the existing NHC Carily development.
Okay, we have another call. Go ahead, caller. Not yet? Not in? Okay.
Very well. So, like I was saying, those prices that are given are actually the conventional method of construction that we have set those prices at. Persons like the block and mortar, but we have seen other methods of construction being displayed over the years. Most of them has failed, and they has failed because of the prices. We had one displayed in Castries, like a trailer park by government building some time back. We've had different other orders done, some done in Marigot, in Vieux-Fort, etc. But they have failed. I know very well that St. Lucians will stick to their conventional method of building, but you need to entice them to move away from that. The only way you would entice them is if you come with a concept that is approximately 30% cheaper. It would have to be cheaper. But I remain confident. There have been some proposals that have come forward for different methods of building, but I will not say much about it as yet. I would like to see its success. And the way we are testing its success is whoever are coming with those various alternative methods of construction and building materials, we are asking them to put down a sample building to put down a sample building. And this is the way. If you are serious, whether you are a local contractor or if you or other persons who are coming from outside who are saying that we can afford St. Lucian homes at $100, $110, $150 a square foot rather than the conventional method of $200 a square foot, we are simply saying to come and set up a sample project that persons could actually move in, look at it, feel it, see the layout, touch it, look at the various forms of building materials it's done with, accept it, and then we could produce it for our people in St. Lucia.
Okay, Champagne, you have a question.
Well, I just wanted to ask the chairman, it's so strange and that in 2 years you have an administration that is about to undertake 11 housing development. Well, I say undertake, but they talking about 11. And then, we always have to talk the politics. How many housing developments were done from 2011 when the Labour Party got in up until when they got out of office, if you know?
A housing development? None. No housing development. The only thing that was done in St. Lucia within that period was the continuation of the Moshi project, where 42 houses were built. And you've heard the story of those houses.
About
the quality and the problems that we have faced with those houses altogether. And that was on a CDB project. That is the only thing. Secondly, in terms of a land development, what was done was something in Bois d'Orange, I think the Tuya area.
I remember
that was done. But here's the problem. They went in, they implemented this project without even verifying who's the landowner. So imagine they went in and they did this development without the government of St. Lucia owning that property. So now this government again had to move in
I think
and
that's
find
the
the
same
money.
situation with that office block that was going up in Vieux-Fort.
Right. So this government had to again find the monies to go in, acquire this property, pay off the landowners, and eventually this area will be made available for the sale for sale. Forestier, when we came in, immediately after we came into office, within less than 3 months, I think the election was in June. By September, we started work on the Forestier housing project. And when I say started, I'm not talking about starting to design, but we had done the designs, etc., and we actually commenced work in Forestier around September, October, immediately after.
Okay, we have another email, a response there from the previous email. It says, thank you, Mr. Mangal, for the information given and the enlightenment about NHC. NHC seems to have a good vision for the people of St. Lucia. Hope you and your colleagues will deliver the plans that have been proposed. Good job.
Thank you very much for this. Back to Forestier. So we went into Forestier. There was a plan that was approved previously. We took this plan. We had to do certain modifications to this plan, and we implemented the Forestier project. The quality of the infrastructure Forestier is second to none. And more so, this Forestier project was done on the PPP, Private Public Sector Partnership. So a local contractor moved into Forestier, implemented the Forestier project, financed the Forestier project, etc., and then handed it over to the government of St. Lucia. Every single lot in Forestier has been sold or assigned.
Wow.
Every single lot. And more so, the infrastructure in Forestier is second to none. It will be the first NHC project in over 15 to 20 years that will be taken over by the Ministry of Infrastructure.
All right, it seems like our line is down. I just tried calling it myself. There seems to be a line problem. Our alternate number is 713-0931. I know a lot of you must have been calling in. We'd like to apologize for that. It's something beyond our control right now. It's not a problem in the studio. Well, I guess we need to do a program on flow sometime soon.
Well, it's interesting enough that Norbert, we checked the line when you started the program, and we were receiving calls. All of a sudden now we're not receiving calls. But it's timely to tell our listeners that there will be 2 new numbers for the station very shortly. And those numbers are 456-0931, 0931, and 0932. Now, the significance of that is that you will always be able to remember it, because 931 is the frequency for the station.
93.1.
93.1, 0931. So the hardest thing to remember is the code 456. So 4560931 and 0932. 0932 will be the office line. So we apologize sincerely for whatever has happened between 8 o'clock and now, but we have an alternate number of 713-0931.
Okay, I have a question here via WhatsApp. It's one of our listeners from all the way out in... Oh, I just got another message here. Before we go to that question, someone said to me that all fixed lines are down since 7:30 tonight. Lime and Digicel mobile phones are also down. I don't know how extensive that is, but apparently there seems to be some large outage somewhere. Lime mobile to mobile works.
Well, we just got a call on
on Digicel.
Yeah.
So there seems to be some major issue with the telephones tonight. If you can get through, 713-0931 with Digicel, that's working. The question from Atlanta, Georgia. My question is, what are the requirements if a St. Lucian overseas wants to purchase a home from one of these housing projects?
Once this person is a St. Lucian, they have the equal right to purchasing this property, just like every St. Lucian that is here. Clearly, whereas it would be wise for us to prioritize and give first-time home owners the first option, simply because of the partnering with the private sector. We have to look at the commercialization component for the private sector. These projects will be open to all St. Lucians. It does not matter whether you already have a home. Okay, you will also be able to purchase another parcel of land. We are hoping, however, that we will have rolled out enough parcels and enough lands that it would rule out the possibility of speculation, because then every St. Lucian would be able to have access to one of those units, and thereby it would minimize the possibility of persons simply trying to speculate over those properties.
So St. Lucians in the diaspora who are looking to return home and to own a property here, you're just as able to apply as a St. Lucian living in St. Lucia.
That is correct.
Okay, good.
That is correct.
Number to call, 713-0931. If you can't get through, our email is up. The email address is info@keepingitreal.lc. Okay, so we're going back to Mr. Mangal.
Yes, sir. So this clearly is the new concept that we have put forward. It answers the questions as to where will the finance come from, or who's actually doing those projects. And it is a very ambitious project, and I'm very happy that the local stakeholders have embraced it. Persons have flooded our offices for those forms, and by the look of it, we believe that quite a number of them will also submit their proposals to the NHC, and we believe that we will work with a number of them and see a number of those projects happening. What will be the spin-off from this? Enormous for this country. We would be moving way ahead in terms of meeting our housing needs and our housing stock. We will be providing employment for our people, and it will be local funds, local persons involved within the construction sector, developing homes and units for St. Lucians. And that is very exciting. That is very exciting for all of us. We will not immediately meet the entire need of all of the housing stock. We heard about this 14,000. I believe initially, more realistically, it is true that based on those statistics, based on the census of 2010, 2011, some figures in the region of 11,000 was quoted. Also, we looked at the number of young St. Lucians and persons who have been renting units all over the place, who earn a decent salary that can purchase a house. It's the banks, and the figures from the banks are that in the region of 12,000. So clearly there is a market,
right,
to be fulfilled, and clearly there is the social responsibility from the government point of view that we need to be able to have affordable housing for our people. So we'll be solving the issue of creating affordable homes, and we'll be also creating employment for our people, having the good spin-off out there. Now we are not trying to eliminate persons from the outside from participating, right? But we are simply trying to empower our local people. Persons from the outside, it is all up to the contractors as to how they are going to be raising their funds, legitimately that is, right? And to make a very tangible proposal to the NHC. Also, despite we have mentioned 11 sites, which we are hoping that we will be able to attract investment into all 11 sites to be developed, we are also putting out the plea to persons who may have private property that would want to develop those properties, but do not have the funding to develop these properties, do not have the ability to develop in those properties. You could come into the NHC as well. Discuss it with us. The possibility of putting up your property in a development proposal with the NHC. We will engage you once the price that you're looking for that property is right. We may not be able to pay you upfront for that property, but we would be looking to partner with you to develop in that property. Your benefits will come subsequently to you, as well as you will be making a tangible contribution towards the housing stock in St. Lucia.
Okay, I have another question via WhatsApp here. It says a question from Staten Island, New York, to Mr. Mangal. What exactly is going to be done with the CDC? Are they going to be demolished? If so, what will replace them? And I suppose this is the CDC in Castries.
In Leclerc or Castries?
Well, I asked whether it's in town, but many people over the years have commented about the CDC in Castries, in the center of town. I think it's the biggest waste of, some of the most prime real estate we have in the city of Castries. What plans, if any, are there for the CDC in Castries?
I'll make a bold statement. I'll give my opinion first, right? Those CDCs have outlived their usefulness. They were temporary buildings
in Castries. They responded in Castries.
Yes, and I'm talking about the old CDCs in Castries. Those after the 1948 fire. Mm-hmm. They have outlived their usefulness. Some of them are breaking down. They are actually getting to the point of being structurally unsound. One of them was structurally unsound and was demolished
on Jeremy Street.
That is correct.
Two of them,
right? Had to be.
Yeah.
You notice that there is a lot of settlement.
Yes,
those buildings are sinking. There are parts of those buildings where the steel is already bulky and so forth. These things needs to be demolished. And I know that it might have been the home of persons over a long period of time, but it is getting to the point where it is unsafe. And yes, and it needs to be demolished. On the other front, like you said, this is some of the best real estate we have in this country. And why would you have your best real estate? Whereas your best real estate is going for $160 a month. We have units renting there to persons at $160 a month. Not in probably, maybe Bhutan might rent even more expensive.
But hold on a second, Hold on a second, Let's keep it real.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, like that, eh?
Yes.
We're keeping it real. We're keeping to the name of this show.
Right.
$160 a month, $200 a month. I think the most expensive unit is $400 a month, something of the sort. Or less. But we've all heard the stories. St. Lucia is not too big. We've all heard the stories about persons who live in the CDC, paying minimal rent, and they've been able to build their own homes that they're now renting out.
Right. And they're still at the CDC.
That has not been fair for people who really and truly need the housing. And I share the same sentiments that the CDC in Castries have long outlived their usefulness.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the use of space,
correct,
it's ridiculous.
Correct. And all sorts of things happen there. You have persons subletting to other persons at higher cost, and they're not even paying that measly rent to the NHC and to government, and they are the ones making the most noise for maintenance. and so forth. So, I mean, the plans of the government, I know that the government is looking very seriously at the Mount Pleasant area. I mean, it is not.
And Mount Pleasant is where, for those who don't know?
Mount Pleasant is in the Calvary area, the same area near the burnt-out Folk Research Center. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that it was the Honorable Minister who said last week in our build-up to the symposium that government is looking at the possibility of developing those lands to relocate persons within the CDC. And immediately it was said on social media and so on that this is why they're looking to take over the lands of the Folk Research Center and to develop it into housing. The site that the government is looking at does not incorporate the Folk Research Center site itself. The Folk Research Center has a portion of land there where it had its buildings sited on. But there are other lands there which belongs to private individuals. And these are the lands that the government is in dialogue and negotiation with for development. So that is one possibility. I'm not saying that this is concrete. I mean, it is left to the government for them to do so. But clearly there is the need to doing something about the old CDC buildings in Castries. Something has to be done. We should not wait for a catastrophe or for some, God forbid, terrible situation to happen for us to be able to deal with the CDC units.
Okay, folks, we've just been given the go-ahead. We're going to go an extra 15 minutes tonight. We know there's some issues with the telephones, and that's why your calls have not been able to come through. There seems to be a problem with the providers here. So we're absolutely sure that this discussion is of interest to many people out there, and that most of you listening have questions, and we were expecting quite a number of calls tonight, but unfortunately there seems to be some telephone issues affecting landlines, so your calls are not coming through on that number. You can call us on 713-0931 or email. We've gotten a number of email questions tonight. You can email us at info@keepingitreal.lc. And we just got another email here. Let me open that one up. Okay. It says, "Good evening, Mr. Mangal. Great and exciting news. At least for the first time, homeowners and people are interested in a higher standard of living. I don't think anyone except the usual suspects will have any problem with your board's initiative. St. Lucians will thank the government for helping the people acquire a piece of our beautiful island. Maybe your organization can look at some high-rise buildings in places like cul-de-sac to decentralize housing, utilizing the Condo Act, which shall allow St. Lucians to open or to own their own home."
Very well. In fact, we did mention about the multifamily residential units, and that's what this email writer is alluding to, giving us the area of cul-de-sac. But when we spoke of shock, remember we spoke of some of those lands which are deemed too steep for development, that we will put in the retaining walls, we would do the basic infrastructural work that is required, and we will make it multifamily residential units. Maybe not fully high rise, but 4 levels, 5 levels, and having those units inside of there, those flats, which St. Lucians will be able to purchase for the first time in St. Lucia. Will you be able to not go in and rent a unit like a CDC unit, but be able to own that unit? You pay a yearly maintenance and operational fee. You have absolutely nothing to do inside there. Your insurance is paid. Your garbage is collected. There will be communal facilities such as gyms and possibly swimming pools, etc.
I know Champagne's gonna Champagne. You're gonna like that, right?
So this is the whole concept. We're taking it to a next level. We are bringing it up to the first world level and realizing that not every single St. Lucian in our very small island with limited land space should have all of the amenities of a single family residential. That will be made available, but that option that this particular email writer has mentioned will be made available. There will be amendments made to the Act to allow it to happen, and also as existed within the Land Registration Act. already a block and parcel number is being identified as a vertical or horizontal alignment with a self-contained unit.
Well, that's good. Mr. Ellis, anything from you?
Well, it certainly sounds very interesting. I was wondering why Champagne didn't want to sign up tonight. You know, but
he's gotten pre-approval.
You sure Champagne doesn't secretly have interest in one of those old units we try to demolish?
No, but seriously, I have to go back there, Brother Mangal, because that is so unbelievable. You're saying to me, in the last administration term of 5 years, not one housing project was earmarked for St. Lucia? Not even one you know of?
Well, they tried with several projects, but they tried and failed. They did not come up with a proper concept. And I don't know why sometimes we actually dismiss our own people.
Right.
You know, we have the tendency of thinking that we must go outside of St. Lucia to get certain things done. And if you look at all of the projects they try to implement involve foreign companies. And every single one of them failed. And it cost the government of St. Lucia a lot of money. Rivadore was going on well with the local contractor. That was there. But we had to get Bow Panel from the UK involved and form a joint consortium with the NHC, which was called NHC Bow. Transfer the land. 51% shares to that foreign company. That company was supposed to transfer monies into the government of St. Lucia. Never did. They owned the property without an alien land holding license. What sort of madness is that? Today, we have to move in, pay.
Pay the guy out.
We have to pay over $7 million just to get that property back and now to redevelop it. Talvan, the same thing. Why? I mean, this is why immediately when we got into office, we implemented the Forestry Housing Project to indicate that it could be done, and more so it could be done with local contractors, local funds, local persons involved.
But
and
give us the
interesting
status of the Forestry Project. When it began, what the status of it is now, whether there were or are individual phases, and which phase are we in now, and how has it progressed?
Forester, we have there 60 free lots, and Forester is a community project. In there, and this is what we're doing community projects. We're doing projects to incorporate living facilities for persons. So we're not moving into these areas and just putting lots for homes and that's it. In Forester, we improve. We have a playing field within the development. That is within what would be the open space, proper playing field. We have a lot for a church in the development. We have a lot for a human resource development center. 2 commercial lots in that development. More so, we enter into that development with concrete roads. Concrete roads, not the cheap and spray you see over the place that after 5 years there's a whole set of holes and so on. Proper concrete roads with proper concrete drains, not even concrete blocks, but concrete drains cast in situ with forms and so on inside of there. And so we have the most modern infrastructure. And with that most modern infrastructure, that got all the necessary approvals by the DCA and all the approvals by the Ministry of Infrastructure. And that is a problem we've had in St. Lucia for quite a while. A lot of developments, both private and in the public sector, did not meet the requirements of the Ministry of Infrastructure. And so the Ministry of Infrastructure refused to take over those projects for implementation. So you find that a lot of areas where you go, you're seeing persons going to their homes, but the road is in a deplorable state. And they're now asking the parliamentary reps for those areas to do something about it. But really and truly, these were private developments. And with those private developments came that responsibility. Now we also have the problem at the NHC, where developments before Forestier, we have to go back with our meager resources and try to bring them up to standard in order to make the Ministry of Infrastructure take over this project. But Forester, as a model project, will be taken over by the Ministry for Development, so that would end the NHC's responsibility. It therefore will be the responsibility of the government of St. Lucia to maintain it. But with the superior infrastructure that it has, we expect that development will hold for a very long time. And so, like we said, it's properly designed. When we came in, we made some changes to the development, and we had to acquire an additional 3 acres of land. that, the arm of government moves very, very slowly, especially where civil servants
The
are
red tape.
concerned.
I was talking to somebody some time ago. I haven't forgotten you there. You're coming on soon.
I don't want to take over your program.
No,
Right.
you're talking about red tape there. I was talking to an individual some time ago, and he said to me that the British invented red tape,
Okay.
and St. Lucia perfected it.
All right.
Mr. Mangal,
So-
I have 2 points. One is that I want to compliment you and your board for the idea of this apartment building with all the amenities, swimming pool, as you say. That might be a luxurious part of it. Yeah. But more so, the point that somebody can rent an apartment and have their proper garbage collection. In Toronto and Montreal and the bigger cities, you go there, there's a directory of persons where you select the security aspect to go into this apartment building. That's the type of thing that West Indians who go overseas go and rent their apartment. So that idea is very interesting, and I applaud you for that. The second point is that it's good that you're coming out with this information at this time, because it tells the young lady or the young gentleman who's looking at moving out from their home, they can start to save to have their own little space.
Correct.
I think that's absolutely wonderful for young people starting off. Property or ownership.
Yeah.
Ownership.
But what I'd like to ask you, is there any arrangement, or is there any banking institutions that you would be able to suggest that they start to negotiate those things with, so that they can go and get the information ready for that?
Yes.
This
is why we are not excluding the financial institutions, despite we are targeting contractors with the capacity to develop in those sites. We are also involving the financial institutions, and we've been speaking to the financial institutions. We have shown them the parameters, what type of lots, what size buildings, what are the price range of a household and package, and we are challenging them to be on board. They have responded positively. In fact, they are very excited. Quite a few of them are willing to partner with the NHC, especially in the secondary component of the development, to say, well, we are there with you. You are doing those projects. We will then roll out special packages of loans and so on that will make available to the various persons who are purchasing those properties.
Yeah. This is what I would like to make it very clear. Would they be going to the developer, or would they be going to the NSC, or would they have to deal with the financial institution, like the St. Lucia Development Bank?
It all depends on the type of proposal that is submitted. There will be some very exciting proposal. I can very well see that there's the possibility that maybe developers who are quite capable might incorporate the financing to the persons who are purchasing the house and land packages within their own arrangement. Okay. That is possible. A lot of our contractors who are not capable, who may not have the finances and so on, may have to have a proposal in partnership with one of the financial institutions. Now, when I say in partnership, basically may have to come in with a financial institution supporting them.
I can see the credit unions get involved with that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can mention one particular credit union that is very eager to ensuring that they could meet the mandate of providing affordable homes, or actually financing affordable homes for their membership, and that is the CSA, the Civil Service Credit Union. And I think within their own portfolio that they have some degree of financing that they would like to put towards housing as well.
Yeah, I also want to say that the $6 a square foot lot in Talpon area seems quite reasonable. Oh, yes, very reasonable compared to other areas where I know it starts at $9 a square foot.
Well, actually, the cost of land now is about $10 a square foot. And if you, depending on the original price of the property, let's just say for argument's sake that you are supposed to come in with a property of $2 or $3 a square foot, and you will spend $10 to develop it. That's already $13. You have to add on the developer's markup and so on, cost of interest, etc. That is why most of the time the price of land in St. Lucia starts about $15 a square foot.
Yeah.
But That is what makes places like Forestier so excited. So exciting. Forestier was not done with any government subsidy, right? But we were able to bring down that cost of development on the saleable lands from that $10 or $9 a square foot to $6.75 a square foot. And as a result, was able to sell a package to the various landowners at between $9 and $11 a square foot. Now that's $6 a square foot, because I don't want anybody to misquote me and say, well, I came on the air and say lands will be available in Shock or Talvan and so on at $6 a square foot. That $6 a square foot is for the rationalization of the unplanned section of the development. These are lands where persons have already been occupying, they have their homes on, and we now have to move in, survey it, put proper roads, infrastructure. At $6, we are actually subsidizing that infrastructure. So in the new developments, especially where contractors and commercial entities will be involved, because let's face it, no contractor, nobody will come into partnering with the NHC to do any development if they know they will be at a loss, right? I mean, privatization is for profit. So there must be a form of incentive to those persons. So these projects will not be expected to be sold at $6 a square foot, but it will be sold at a price which is affordable, because we are going to make sure that we produce it in a way and we go with a concept that will minimize the cost of infrastructure. But basically, we expect those developers who are moving in to recognize some returns from their investment. And I want St. Lucians to understand that. Do not come tomorrow and say, well, this is not for the Malawi, this is not for the poor, this is, beyond our means and so on. Look at that. There were real costs in development. And since that there are real costs, we need to be able to ensure that those costs are covered.
Okay. Thank you very much. Folks, tonight we have in studio our guest, the chairman of the National Housing Corporation, Mr. Timothy Mangal, who's telling us about some exciting news. 11 housing projects which are beginning to take shape, and we're expecting at least the Shock area to begin going on the market in the early part of next year, the first quarter. So thank you very much. This is Keeping It Real. We're going to go back to Mr. Mangal for some final words.
Well, thank you again for having me here. And let me tell St. Lucians that this is for them. This is done by the NHC in collaboration with St. Lucians. We want it to be our project for our people, and to ensure that our passion and our aim is to ensure that we do make all St. Lucian proud homeowners. Projects that are coming on, when we will be putting out the information to come in and to place your deposits, do not wait. Do so immediately, because right within the studio, everyone is excited. Champagne is asking me already, when can he put his deposit on Shock? And that is the same attitude throughout this country. Persons are excited about Shock. They're excited about Talvan. There are those who are excited about Rivadore. I can see that the floodgates will be open. It is going to be for St. Lucians. Come in, make sure you place your name down and you own a part of your country. More so when you own a piece of real estate, a piece of St. Lucia, it is not only going to be a home for you to stay. But remember that it does not depreciate like owning a vehicle, right? And after you purchase that piece of St. Lucia and that piece of real estate and you build your house, it appreciates in value.
That's right.
It appreciates in value. And while you're paying your loan, the cost of your loan, then your principal sum decreases, but the value of your property increases. So you have what is called equity. So tomorrow, when you need some money from the bank to send your children to school, or you need some money to have a business or an investment, this is where you could use that equity and go to the bank. So it is real. It is really, really real when you start. This is the platform you need. And as a St. Lucian myself, as someone who's in business now, I can tell you this is where I started. I started by not purchasing a vehicle first, but purchasing a piece of property first. While I was a young man and everybody else was liming the young girls and having their car, etc., I wanted to do the same thing. But I said, no, let me be disciplined. Let me buy a piece of property first. And buying that piece of property set the platform for me in determining who I am today. Yeah. And I am asking all young St. Lucians, this opportunity will be for you. The prices of those developments will be made as affordable as possible. And please make it your duty to earn a piece of St. Lucia. You will not regret it. Thank you very much.
Right. Well, there you go, folks. That's the chairman of the National Housing Corporation, Mr. Timothy Mangal, telling us about an exciting 11 housing projects due to commence in St. Lucia over time. The first, Shock, and Talvan, and the other one down in the Bele, Rivedore. Yes. You wanna tell them these 11 project areas again?
Okay, I'll just go through it quickly. Shock Development, 89 acres of land. La Clary Development, 3.11 acres of land. That's where the old CDCs are presently. That is being demolished. The Rock Hall Development. I didn't say much about it, but Rock Hall is directly where the secondary school was. That area there. And that is in the area of Castries East. That is in an opposition constituency. We'll be engaging the parliamentary rep for the area in the development of that site. So we're incorporating everyone. Talvan Phase 3, which is in Babono, 28.67 acres. Bel Air Development Phase 1, which is 70.35 acres in Castries Southeast. Bel Air Development 2, 29.65 acres, again in Castries Southeast. Bois Joli Development in Dennery, 85.51 acres of land. Angers Development in Miku South, 45.27 acres of land. Larissus Development in Vieux-Fort, 295 acres of land. Wow. Rivadore Development in Soisel, 55.82 acres of land. And the Canaries Development, 57.75 acres of land. If you notice the pattern here, Mr. Norbert, we are actually developing the entire St. Lucia.
That's great.
The entire St. Lucia, we are living nowhere else, okay? With the exception of, well, we are very close to Grosile. Shock is very close to Grosile. Babolo is very close to Grosile.
Okay, great.
So,
great.
Despite where you're thinking of living in St. Lucia, there is a property that will be made available.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to Mr. Timothy Mangal for being with us tonight. The information, I'm quite certain, has been very informational for all St. Lucians. We'd like to just give you some information from the police. Please respect one another during the carnival season. The police will be out in force and they will not be tolerating any shenanigans. Keep it real, folk. We want to see our carnival progress and get better. We hear 3 million invested in carnival this year, and this government is committed to the arts and to our culture. Also, next week, because of Carnival Monday and Tuesday, and we know all of you are going to be out, there will be no Keeping It Real next week, Tuesday. Instead, we're going to be on the following day, Wednesday night next week at 8 p.m.
There'll be no reflections either Monday night.
Well, we could reflect and keep it real,
We'll reflect and keep it real on Wednesday.
That's right. So please, folks, please stay safe. Safety for Carnival should be your priority. Don't drink and drive. The life you save may be your own. Thank you very much to all our listeners tonight. Keeping it real. Thank you for being in studio, Champagne.
Don't forget the George Jones show coming up on Thursday with yours truly.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. Have a good night. See you next week. I'm Norbert Williams. Good night.